Well, good morning, everyone. We get together most weekday mornings at this time, 8 o'clock Central, to discuss resources that are available through some grant allocations that we've received to help small businesses access capital. And we're going to have our primary discussion, as usual, on this new turnkey resource called the Startup Business Funding Package. We want you to understand what it does and why it's so effective and how it works so quickly. And then also, we just rolled out over the weekend the Cheap Business Address. So the Cheap Business Address is just providing specifically a commercial address that has full documentation so we can go directly and go get funding, whereby the Chapman loan program here, that the business startup, includes actually getting the new business set up. So this is in response to what many of you have asked for. So if we don't have a business that's ready for funding, then this is the resource which we'll go through. If you already do have a business and you just need a unique commercial business address with full documentation, then we can just use the Cheap Business Address. Let's divert for a moment and talk about documentation, because I think this is a point of financial literacy that we need to dig deeper. I think many small business owners, first of all, they overlook the fact of having a unique business address. We can't go to funding for large business loans with a residential address or a post office box, or even some of these shared virtual office addresses, where if you go to a Regis or a WeWork, great companies, have nothing but positive things to say about them, but they give shared addresses. The key is we need to have a unique address. Probably what's happened is it's my fault. I've probably not spent enough time educating why a unique address is important. The reason that a unique address is important is that when we go for funding, typically the lender is going to look for documentation of a real lease. We can't just say, wink, wink, we have some commercial address. They're going to typically request a copy of the lease. And the lease has to be of the same duration as the loan repayment term. So it's so often people want simple, and some things aren't so simple. So now we're peeling back another layer to make sure that you all understand why this is set up this way. It's not for our benefit, it's for the client's benefit. So we provide them the documentation, and this is included over here in the full startup program, but also a la carte for those that don't need a business setup, they just need an address. So let's talk about what's also needed beyond just the lease document. Now, again, this has to be a real lease document signed by two parties, because it's going to be requested by the lender. But beyond just the lease itself, what they're going to typically ask for are three things. Obviously, we provide those because we know what lenders are going to typically ask for. They're going to be looking for an acceptance letter. They're going to be looking for a landlord's lien waiver, and they're going to be looking for a guarantee agreement. So all of that is provided. So then we can go to funding. So let's go ahead and take it from the top as far as what's in the Startup Business Funding Package and why. At any time you have any questions, comments, concerns, just go ahead and type it in to the Q&A box on Zoom. It's kind of like a chat box, and we'll address your questions, comments, concerns. So we applied for and received the grant. We were the only organization that received the grant. The grant was designed to position small businesses to be fundable, right? Because we've talked about many times before, it does not matter how badly an entrepreneur, a person, wants money. It does not matter how badly they need money. It comes down to, are they qualified? And that's what you and I do. Those of you that are our distribution partners, that's what we focus on doing, is helping clients legally and ethically become qualified for funding. So here, through the grant, The Startup Business Funding Package is providing essentially a turnkey resource, so they, meaning the client, has a business that is fundable. So we're going to go through the bullets here, but this is specifically what it takes. So even if you don't want to take advantage of the grant, that's fine. You can take note. This is what you need to have have a fundable business. So could you do it on your own? Of course. But we're here to make it easy, fast, and simple for you. So the first thing that we need to have for a credible business, as I was mentioning a moment ago, is a unique business address. So we include that for free in the Startup Business Funding Package, or it's available now on a la carte over here on Cheap Business Address. Several of you asked for it to be available on a breakout basis. Now it is. So we've already talked about why the business address is so important. It's the foundation of credibility of the business. No, we can't shortcut it. We can't take some other address and pretend that it's a unique commercial address. We can't say that our back bedroom is Suite 101. Every address is coded in the United States Postal Service database. We need to have a unique business address to be credible for a large business loan. Now, this is not to say you can't go get a personal loan without a business address, but that's not the nature of what we do or what we talk about. We're talking about getting business funding, which is far superior to personal funding. Within the Startup Business Funding Package, what we do after we have the address, which is pretty much instant, is go ahead and file with the Secretary of State. We want a business that is in good standing with the Secretary of State, and the grant pays for it. So the client doesn't have to pay for it. Once that comes back, which normally takes 3 to 5 days on average, then we go get the EIN. Again, that's free. EIN is the unique identifying number, kind of like a social security number is to a person. This is to the business. So this order is immensely important. As many of you know, I used to work for the SBA, and it amazed me how many small businesses would bastardize this order. They would go in the wrong order. We need the address first, then we file with the Secretary of State, then we get the EIN. People that don't know what you and I know think, oh, I'll just go get an EIN first. Now I have a business. No, you don't. You have an EIN that's not even attached to a business. Or I'll go file with the Secretary of State with a bad address. Well, that's horrible, because now we got to go clean up the address. And it's not just going to the Secretary of State, because what happens? Dun & Bradstreet, which we'll talk more about in a moment, Experian Business, there's so many organizations that get a feed from the Secretary of State. Now, all of them have your bad address. So we spend a lot of time and energy trying to clean that up versus just going in this correct order. That's what we advocate for. Now, what's not mentioned here is after we have the address and the entity and the EIN, then we go ahead and open the business bank account, of course. Once the business bank account is open, now we're ready to build business credit. So let's talk about what that means and why that's important. Because again, if you don't understand the why, then the what doesn't matter. So what does that mean? We're going to add trade lines under the EIN of the business entity to build up its business credit profile. There are 3 primary business credit bureaus: Dun & Bradstreet, Experian Business, and Equifax Business. Each have their own credit scoring algorithms. What we want to do is look credible. We want the business to look credible. Well, why would we want that? Because we want funding. It's ridiculous. It's a mistake to think that a business that doesn't look credible on paper is going to qualify for a large amount of funding. That's a pipe dream. So we're going to add trade lines. What type of trade lines, you might ask? There's lots of different types of trade lines. In fact, this can even be a trade line. We can even position this as a trade line. We can buy real estate in the business name. We can buy automobiles in the business name. We can get credit cards, MasterCard, Visa under the business EIN, so it didn't show on personal credit. We can just get simple little net 30 accounts. There's lots of different trade lines, but we'll work with you on the right type of trade lines that meet your needs and preferences. But we need to have a credible business when we're trying to go get large amounts of funding. We're going to also transfer over assets. Now, this is the most confusing one. So if you've not been on the webinar before, you'll really want to focus in, because this is innovative, it's legal, it's very effective, but it's non-traditional. I was working with a gentleman over the weekend, yesterday specifically, who's an M&A broker, M&A attorney. And we were talking about this, and he deals with buying and selling of businesses. He's actually helping us buy a collection agency, which I think some of you heard about. And so there's a lot of people, even in the funding space, that are not familiar with this. So let's dig into why this is included. So what we said is we want to have a business that's ready for funding, fast, easy, effective, right? That's the goal. That's the goal. And we've talked about how we've gotten to this point now, including having a credible address. We're in good standing with Secretary of State, good standing with the IRS. We have a strong business credit profile. What's left, though, is does the financials of the business look strong? So often people will say, well, Tom, this is a new business. It's a startup. There's no way they can have strong financials. That is a horrible mistake to make. We would call that a wrongful inference. That's not true. A startup can have very strong financials, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to transfer over $10,000 of assets. I'll describe that in a second. And we're going to put it on the new entity's balance sheet. So now the new entity has collateral for funding, and then we can turn around and help liquidate those receivables to turn it into cash, into bank deposits. So you might say, well, that sounds crazy, or I don't understand it. Well, we're transferring over receivables, accounts receivables. So those receivables are transferred over. The title is literally transferred over. Now they're owned by the new business. Now we have collateral. We liquidate those receivables for funding. Hopefully that makes sense. Now we can go to funding. What type of funding could we go for? Lots of different types of funding, because now we have a credible business, right? Again, we've got a good address. We're in good standing with the government. We have a strong business credit profile. We have strong financials. Now we're ready to go to funding. We could go lots of places. But one special place that we could go for funding is the Chapman Fund. Now, the Chapman Fund has several advantages, but it also has some disadvantages, like most things in life. So advantage number one is we don't have to go to a bank or credit union to apply for funding. We can go through a taxing authority because we have geographic access to the Chapman Fund. So that's good. The bad is it is a small loan amount. They will only fund up to $250,000. So if we need more than $250,000, we're going to need to turn around and either form a second entity or use this as the first tranche and then apply for a second tranche elsewhere. Make sense? So ultimately, through the U.S. Startup Grant, the Startup Business Funding Package is here to help businesses get positioned for funding with no risk. What I commonly hear is, how long does it take? And then what's the certainty of success? So let's go through both of those. How long does it take? We need to expect to get through these bullets 30 to 60 days. Everybody wants today. Everybody wants tomorrow. Too good to be true. If we're going from scratch, we need 30 to 60 days. Now, if that's too long, we could come over here, just plug into the cheap business address, and now we're at 24 hours. So this would be quicker. Here, we're actually building an entity from the ground up. So 30 to 60 days is the timeline. If that's not acceptable, then we may want to use the cheap business address with your current entity. Second would be, what's the certainty? There's no risk. I mean, we guarantee it. There's literally no risk to the client. There's a two-step process to qualify or to participate, and it's stated right here. Step one, watch this training video. Frankly, we probably covered about everything that's in it, but that is the identified step one. Step two is to enroll. Crazy simple. There are 4 resources listed here. Now I'm navigating off chapmanloanprogram.org in case I didn't clarify that. 4 resources on the website. First of which is a link to enroll. And the truth is it's the same as step 2. So that and this is exactly the same. If you want financing, let's say you say, no, I'm already ready to go. I don't need to go build a credible business. I've got a credible business. I'm just ready for funding. Awesome. Then let's skip all this. It's unnecessary. Then go right here and we'll go to funding today. We'll get you funding offers today. Third resource is additional training that's optional, but it does have funding success stories, which people tend to like to see, understandably so. And then fourth is if you'd like to be a distribution partner, in other words, get paid to help people improve their financial literacy and go through the curriculum. So those are the resources. So that's chapmanloanprogram.org. In contrast, we have Cheap Business Address, which is kind of a stripped out version. So instead of the full value proposition that's listed here, we're essentially doing the first bullet and the last bullet, skipping everything in between. First bullet, last bullet. So we can come over to the Cheap Business Address, cheap, credible, and easy, providing a commercial address, talk about why it's important. And just as we started our conversation with today, there's 3 elements of what's included. The unique address, the full documentation, which we said, right? The documentation is crucial. Don't make a mistake to think, oh, I can just go get an address from Bob's pawn shop and that address will be just fine. Will it be? Do you have full documentation that shows that you have a true a real lease? Do you have an acceptance letter in your possession? Do you have a landlord's lien waiver in your possession? Do you have a guarantee agreement in your possession? If not, you're not ready to go to funding. You just have Bob's pawn shop's back room as an address. It won't work. You can't game the system. And then, of course, the Chapman Fund, which we've talked about already. So here, we're providing the entire scope versus the first and the last bullet only on Cheap Business Address. All right. Russell asked, what is the website for the Cheap Business Address? It is cheapbusinessaddress.com. I don't know if Russell was pulling my leg or he might be on a mobile device, so he couldn't see it. But cheapbusinessaddress.com. There it is. There it is. And again, right here is where you get started. And I can even click on it if Russell, you want me to. So you click on that, it pops up a new page, and it allows you to get plugged in. I mean, it's super simple. Super simple. We're very transparent, right? There's not like passwords. So if you want to see and enroll in the Cheap Business Address, it's right here. Same on the Chapman Loan Program. Oh, okay, I want to get started. You can click here, and it pops up on your screen, and there it is. Right? So we're very transparent. The whole world can see how it works. These are legal, effective programs. All right, so let's go to the next question, which is Fu's question. Cost on the Cheap Business Address. The Cheap Business Address is $99, and you'll see that. Oops, can't highlight. $99. So that's the answer. Cheap Business Address. Click on here. Pops up. It's $99. All right. And let's see. Ficus has the next question regarding timing. Yep. So someone can enroll in the Cheap Business Address today, and we can literally apply for funding tomorrow, 24 hours. So we can blast through these steps in 24 hours. All right, so next question is Vanessa's asking, can you go over again if you already have a business address? Okay, great. Yeah, so if you already have a business address and you have a credible business, so this is a checklist, right? If you have all of this in place, you don't need this resource, and that's okay. We don't want you to enroll if you don't need it. But if you have this in place, then just scroll down, and right here, we'll go ahead and get you funding offers today. No upfront cost, no hard inquiries, no strings attached. Yeah, so that's the answer to Vanessa's question. Russell asked about business credit. So business credit, and I didn't go into that as deep today as I do in some of these sessions. So business credit scores run from 0 to 100. 80 or above is considered to be credible. Dun & Bradstreet has what's called a Paydex score. Experian Business has what's called an Intella score. So the way that we have a good business credit profile is not a mystery. We need to add trade lines, and that's exactly what we do. We will add trade lines so we have a credible business. Going back to what I mentioned before, Russell, there's many different types of trade lines we could add. We can add real estate trade lines. We could add company automobile trade lines. We could do business credit card trade lines. And in my opinion, this is just my opinion, you can dismiss it. I think every business probably could use a business vehicle, right? Because most of us need transportation anyway. Why not have a trade line that is an automobile under the business, fully tax deductible? With Section 179 of the IRS tax code, we can use accelerated depreciation to actually turn a profit or get cash quickly from that purchase. You could wrap it if the type of business you have would benefit from that marketing. So you don't have to get a vehicle as one of the trade lines, but we strongly advocate for it. And then also, Russell, I think every business should have a business credit card. Why wouldn't you want to have at least one business credit card in the business name that doesn't report on your personal credit? So when you're spending money on business things, it's coming out of the business account. So hopefully that answered Russell's question. So let's kind of wrap it up. So the ChapmanLoanProgram.org is really our flagship. It is an innovative approach to take a concept to funding very quickly. Now, if you already have a business and you don't need help having a credible business, you can check yes to all of these things. In other words, you have a good address, you're in good standing with the Secretary of State, you've got good business credit, your balance sheet, your financials look strong, then I agree. You don't need this, and we're not trying to pitch it on you. If that's the case, then skip this, scroll on down, and let's go to funding. Or, as we mentioned, if really all you're wanting is the first and the last bullet, just give me the address and get me access to the Chapman Fund, okay, then that'd be cheap business address. All right, let's see what other questions we have before we wrap it up. Sedruden asked, what is a strong financial statement? Well, a strong financial statement, let's go back to that. That's a very good question. We want to have a balance sheet for our business, which we'll provide. And the balance sheet shows the assets and liabilities of the business, which includes the collateral that can be pledged for funding. And that's, in fact, what we provide here in the Startup Business Funding Package. So let me read his question. What is a strong financial statement? It's there's two primary financial statements of a business: a balance sheet that shows assets and liabilities, and a profit and loss, otherwise called income statement, that shows revenue and expenses. If we have an early stage business, there may not be much going on for revenue and expenses. That's okay, but we definitely want to have a strong balance sheet. A strong balance sheet shows that we have solvency, that we have collateral, and that's what we make sure of, that's built in because we know it's important. All right, a few more questions dripping in here. Who asked about using the Chapman Fund. So the Chapman Fund, let's see, I guess I don't have a detailed, well, over here we do. So if we go here, and this is a little bit small. Let's see if I can make it larger. We talk about uses of the Chapman Fund. It can be used for fixed assets, new construction, renovations, leased property, equipment, inventory, and working capital. Can be used as a standalone or in conjunction with SBA loans for larger amounts. So that's what Fu was asking about, uses of funds of the Chapman Fund. I didn't have that broken down here, but it is on the first page, and you'll access this sheet. Come over here, and if you go to step 2, click on that, which is what I did a few minutes ago. It'll bring this up with more details and ability to enroll. Vicus asks, can we just get the Chapman Fund and build business credit later? Of course. Well, Fu's asking about real estate. So in general, if you're buying, we got to be careful about labels. So you could buy a home, and if it's owned by the business for business purposes, then we're good. But normally you won't use business funding to go buy a residence that's meant to be your primary address, because that's a consumer loan. That's a residential mortgage, which we're not involved with. So yes, we could certainly buy real estate in the business name where it's deeded in the business, tax deductible. And I know a number of you have done this. You bought business real estate, and if you and your family happen to live in it for some period of time, there you have it. But you would need to go just through a normal mortgage loan broker if you're just trying to buy personal real estate, of course. All right, well, we covered a lot of information and we ran longer than usual, but just keep in mind, we get together most weekday mornings at this time, 8 o'clock Central, so we can talk more if you need. But the next step is really simple. Just give it a try. There's no risk. Come over to chapmanloanprogram.org or go back to whomever referred you if you were referred by one of our referral partners. But if you want to go directly to chapmanloanprogram.org, you get 2 steps to follow. Step 1 is to watch the video. Again, I think we've probably covered it and even more so, but you're welcome to do it. And step 2, let's give it a try. There's no risk. There's no reason not to give it a try. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. We'll be back tomorrow morning. Let us know if there's anything we can do to assist you. Obviously, our contact us information is here, additional resources here, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks. Bye-bye.